Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We are delighted to have one of our partners, eOne Solutions, joining us today. Alicia and Rod will be presenting on Popdock is here to save the day. And just as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And you can find our library under our resources tab on our website at enovia.com. And we encourage you to ask questions during our presentation, so please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will answer them at the end of our session. So now I will turn it over to Alicia to kick off our presentation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Angie. I want to dive in today right away. I just have a few slides to show. I want to talk about what Popdock is. I will turn it over to Rod as well. And then, as Angie mentioned, we will have some time for Q&A at the end as well. So let's talk about what Popdock actually is. Popdock is a user-driven reporting tool. It is not a Power BI where you get the 5,000-foot level. It is for those end users wanting to get their hands in the weeds to get that line level detail. We create lists of data, which then you can add on different columns, you can group, you can filter, you can sort, however you'd like with that data. The next thing with Popdock is that it's always going to be in real time. We don't store the data in any warehouse. We don't have any limitations on the number of refreshes you can do either. The other neat thing with Popdock is that we can get data from anywhere. So not just from Business Central or Nav, but we can also get lists of data from those other systems that we're using, such as like a Magento or a Shopify, or maybe you're using a Braintree application or HubSpot or CRM, for example. We can create lists of data from basically anything that has a REST-based API. And we also have over 50 out-of-the-box connectors that we give you with Popdock to start with. The next thing that we do with these lists that we've created is that we can then present these lists inside of other systems where we're working. So let's say you don't want to be in the actual Popdock application. Instead, maybe you live and work in Business Central, or you live and work in Dynamics 365 customer engagement, for example. We can take lists of data and embed them inside of different systems so you can live and work where you like to. So for example, on the screen, this is just Business Central data sitting inside of Dynamics 365 customer engagement. Or maybe let's say that you're moving from an old version of Nav and you're now implementing D365 Business Central. Instead of migrating that data, you can even, let's say, publish that data to an Azure data lake and then view that data right from within Business Central. Okay, so you have that historical data piece available to you. Next, with this data, what we can do is we can make this data actionable. Okay, so we can take any of those fields that we created in those lists and let's say change a priority on that on a ticket, on a Zendesk ticket, for example, or drill down into a customer card or drill down into an account inside of a different system, or maybe check on a tracking number via a link, for example. So we can add actions onto any fields into those lists as well. And last, and recently added to Popdock, we've built a query builder. So this might be for some more of the technical people on the line, but it is incredibly powerful. Basically, what it allows us to do is get at table level access inside of Business Central, which you can't do currently unless you know how to write some AL code. So what we've built is this tool to allow you to do it without writing AL code, and then you can publish that and consume it inside of Business Central or within other applications such as like Power Automate or Power BI, for example. So this is an incredibly powerful tool that Rod will also be showing in just a second. So Rod, that's your cue if you want to take over.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and welcome everybody to the webinar. Let me, oh, here we go. It is now asking me to share my screen. Let me make sure it's the correct one. Okay, so everyone, I am going to start, I know Alicia had that nicely numbered list. I'm going to start about 5/6 of the way through that list. I'm going to start with the we can show Popdock data anywhere part of it. I'm going to do that inside of my Business Central environment. Now I've got a bunch of different places where I can be embedding what we call a Popdock widget. I'm going to start with the main one though. Because the main one will allow me to show you some of the different features of a Popdock list so that when we talk about a user-driven query tool, what exactly does that mean? Okay, so as a user, I'm within my Business Central environment here, and I'm seeing a list of data. Okay, now with this list, as Alicia mentioned, it's really meant to answer a question. So here I've got a list of purchase orders. This could be, as I can see up here, this could be a list of all my sales transactions or detailed customer ledger or what have you. This could be from my inventory. This could literally be any of my data, not only from within Business Central, but also from other solutions. So Alicia mentioned Zendesk solution in that slide. I don't know if she actually called it out, but it was there. And we'll be looking at that as well. But you could be, I know in this case, I've got some data coming from another ERP, which is Dynamics GP, but this could literally be anything. And we'll delve a little bit more into what do I mean by anything within the next few minutes. Probably closer to 10. But let's take a look at what we can do within the list that we're currently on. So first and foremost, I can move columns around if I wish to. I can also group by. So if I wanted to see this by my vendor ID, I can group here and see who is my buy from vendor number and notice that it's subtotaling on the fly. So I'm essentially pivoting right here within this grid. I don't have to drop that out to Excel to do that. I can get my summary right here. Okay, I have the ability to add and remove other columns. So if I wanted to, I don't know, buy from address line 2 just seems like something to click on. So I can select that and I can add that selected columns. And every time I see Skippy skipping like that, so when I click on refresh, for example, every time Skippy here starts skipping, I'm reaching into that data source in real time. So again, one of Alicia's bullet points there. Now, if I've realized that those last few columns I added were a terrible mistake, I do have the ability to come in here under columns and just very quickly turn those off. And now I've got a nice fresh list back without those columns on it. For those of you who have multiple company databases within your Business Central tenants, I can actually drop this down and very quickly get either all of my company databases blended together or very quickly switch and see what's going on in that other company database as far as purchase transactions go. Okay, obviously this is all subject to some security. We're not just willy-nilly throwing this out to your end users, but what I'm trying to give you here is a sense of what I can do with this data. Now, when I talk about this multi-company as well, some of you might have multiple tenants of Business Central. And what I mean by that is we have a growing number of customers who have a tenant in North America, maybe a tenant over in the UK or Europe, even tenants, Asia, Australia, wherever your BC tenants are. I can make this multi-company drop-down work across all of those tenants. So I can bring all of that data into one spot, and now I can look at my corporate level data as opposed to Microsoft's conception of my data, which is pretty cool. Okay. Now within this as well, we have the ability to filter. Okay, so with my filters, I can choose, whatever column I want to filter. I've got all of my operators are in plain English. So what we're finding is this is just a really easy way for people to learn how to filter their data. Let me just choose a date field real quick. We'll choose a document date. I also have the ability to either enter hard dates like this, or I have something called a compare field, and I can say, you know what, my document date equals this year. Did I not get there yet? here we go, it equals this year. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I'm only seeing transactions dated in 2022, but in true demo data fashion, it is not anything in 2022. So I'm going to remove that filter. But hopefully you know from that, the filters work. And just to put anyone's mind at ease out there, I do have the ability to mix and match. So I can have as many criteria as I want, and I can make them ands and ors however I see fit. So I can really build out complex queries here without having to be complex. Oh, I meant to remove that filter. Okay, now it doesn't matter how cool something is. One of the first things accountants always want to ask me is, that's great, but can I see it in Excel? I do have two answers for that. One is this export button right here will take whatever data is currently in my list and export that out to Excel. The other way to answer that is Popdock can actually be used, I think Alicia touched on this earlier, as a data source for Excel, for Power BI, for Tableau. So we can actually streamline the way you collect your data and then present that out through those other tools if I want really pretty 50,000 foot level view pictures. Okay, I also have the ability to save favorites. So for example, when I drill through this and I go to my sales transactions, for example, oh, well, we have some here anyway. I do have favorites here, which is just different views of the same data. Okay, now what this allows me to do is set up my view the exact way I want it, and then users can quickly come back to this. You know, if I have a report that a week-to-date sales report that I run every Friday, then I can just save that as a favorite with a relative date. It equals this week, and then boom, I have a list that I can run and rerun and rerun. Okay, now I do have the ability to do visualizations within Popdock. So I talked about you know, we're mostly list data. We're very much into details. If I want really pretty visualizations, I go out to Popdock, I go out to Power BI. But we do have some visualizations. For example, if I take a look at my dashboard here, we've got, you know, Excel circa 1995 level visualizations here. All of the big ones, the pie chart, the bar chart, the line charts. We've even got a heat map out there. So we do have some visualizations in case you want to embed those within any solution as well. Okay, so from a user, one last thing I want to talk about while we're here is the concept of details. So if you notice, I've got these little carrots down at the bottom, and sometimes you'll see them on the side as well. These allow me to see more information about whatever record I have selected. So I can see I've got Lewis Home Furniture's purchase order here. I can see what lines are actually on that purchase order. I can see what lines are on this purchase order. I can look at the comments for this purchase order as well, if there are any. Now, this information within the details, just so you know, doesn't have to come from the same solution. One of those pillars that Alicia mentioned earlier was we can get our data from anywhere. We've got over 50 connectors out of the box. We've got a couple of standard connectors, which we'll talk about in a while, which allows me to really get out there into the internet, into my on-premise environment, and get at my data. As long as there's a relationship, these details can come from any solution. So this could be a list of customers up here, and I'm looking at their Salesforce or their dynamic CRM opportunities that are in here, or maybe I've got an online help desk solution. I'm looking at tickets for those customers, whatever it is. Okay. Now, I mentioned there's a couple different ways to experience widgets inside of Business Central in particular. I'm going to show you two more, and then I'm going to move over into Popdock proper and talk about actually customizing these things. Okay, so I'm going to jump into my customers, and I'm going to look for Giordano's. All right, so a couple things in here. Notice I've got skipping in the middle of my page. This is a Popdock widget that we've embedded as a fast tab right here inside of Business Central, okay? Right inside of my customer card. So what this is a list of invoices for this customer. Now, particularly behind this report, and I don't think I have it for Giordano's, I can show you with someone else if you want. I'm actually combining, if you remember, I mentioned that other ERP that's when I was looking at the main one. In this one, I'm actually combining some historical data from that other ERP with my ongoing. But at a minimum, I've got this detailed list here that I can refresh at any moment, to which I can add or remove columns as I see fit. I can filter this data. So while I'm talking to this customer, I have this information at my fingertips, okay, which is pretty slick. So that's one way that we can have that. And if I take a look here, this is where we start to get a little crazy with our widget. So I'm in an invoice for Giordano's right now, and over here is yet another widget. Now this is what we call a widget group. So this is actually several widgets embedded here at the side of this invoice. So first I'm showing my dynamic CRM information here. And this, again, you don't have to be running dynamic CRM or Salesforce to make Popdock work. This could be any data. This is just my sample that I'm using. And in fact, I show this to both CRM and Salesforce people. So I've got the exact same thing here, except as my Salesforce account. Okay. I've also got this guy here. Now I like to show this one from a few different perspectives because it covers off a few different things that Alicia talked about. First of all, this is an online application called Zendesk. It's a help desk solution. But the key point of that description is it's an online solution. This is a REST API that we're talking to get information from Zendesk. Now we're pulling in the Giordano's organization information. So we're passing in that. We're also pulling in any open support tickets for Giordano's. And I want you to take a look at, we've got comments and we've got actions here. So comments is another form of detail. We talked about details earlier, so I can drill into this ticket and see what is the history about this ticket. Pretty cool. But I've also got these actions here. Now, Alicia mentioned actions allowing you to do things. In this case, I'm taking advantage of the API that's available from Zendesk. And if I click on add comment, I can actually interact with that help desk solution. Okay, so I'm actually passing data into Zendesk directly. Okay, and then I can, and I haven't consumed a license, I haven't changed solutions, I haven't done anything. Okay, I simply participated in that process. I could be opening, closing tickets, I could be doing all kinds of stuff. Now, these actions, just so you know, don't have to rely on an API coming from some API REST developer. For those of you who are kind of scared about that, I could use this to open a window in Business Central. So I could open the item or open the customer or the vendor. So it can be a shortcut to a place. Here at eOne Solutions, we have another product called Smart Connect, which is an integration tool that allows you to move data from one solution to another. I could kick off a Smart Connect process from here and maybe generate an invoice for this ticket if I wanted to. I can also kick off a Power Automate process as an action. So I could, create files on my SharePoint or send a text message to the customer or all of those other cool things that Power Automate does really well. Okay, so these actions can be a really powerful part. And the whole point of me focusing on actions for this past 45 seconds or whatever it's been that I've been pontificating is to tell you that Popdock doesn't have to be just a way to present data to your users. You can make it highly interactive, which is another one of those pillars that Alicia talked about up at the top of the presentation. Okay, and just to show you that not all of these widgets have to be pulling data from external solutions, I do have a last widget here, which is showing me based on which line I'm on, so you can see I'm on the sausage line, how much I have on hand, and if I had this assigned to locations, which it isn't in this particular solution, I could see that particular item in all of its locations. Now, one thing we did for a customer recently, which was very, very cool, I talked a couple times about having multiple Business Central tenants. We have a widget like this for one of our customers that shows on-hand inventory for every location at every tenant within their Business Central organization globally, right? So they had, I believe, 4 tenants in total. And then what we did was we created Smart Connect processes where a user could go into actions, right? So they had an action down here and they could kick off an inventory transfer, and they could literally transfer it from warehouse A in tenant 1 to warehouse Z in tenant 4. Okay, which was a very cool project and a great use, I think, of both Popdock and Smart Connect. So those are some of the different ways that we can interact with Popdock from within Business Central. And honestly, that's how most of your users are going to interact with Popdock in general. However, all of that requires the ability for you to generate lists and to really customize it. So let's dig in a little bit on some of that functionality. Okay, now all these tabs across here, just so you know, exactly the same stuff that I just showed you, right? I'm just looking at list-based data. I have the ability to, you know, have my favorites that I can drill around. I can, you know, drag and drop columns, all of that stuff. All of this is exactly the same. So those widgets that we talked about, I can actually take those and embed those anywhere that can accept a web address or anywhere that can accept an iframe. Even more than that, here's one that I can show you. Here's that same Zendesk tickets one that we talked about earlier, but I'm inside Microsoft Teams now. So I actually have the ability to embed those Popdock widgets in Teams and allow my users to interact with them in the exact same way that I've been showing you so far. All those actions, all those details. It's pretty slick. All right, I told you I wasn't going to talk about widgets or lists anymore, so I'll move on from that. But I just wanted you to understand that all of this can be really accessed from anywhere. And we mean pretty much anywhere. All right, so everything in Popdock begins with connectors. As we mentioned, I'm just going to quickly click on this. We do have 50 connectors out of the box. And the reason I like to open this window is to talk about two different concepts. First, we talk a lot on these webinars and on the calls, and even when you talk to me directly about ERP and CRM, right? We tend to focus on those two kind of major components of our business infrastructure, but the average company is running 10, 14, or more applications, and sometimes that's how many a person logs into per day, and they're actually running a whole bunch more than that in general. So I like to point out some of the other solutions we have by default, these Bitleys and the Bugsnags and the, you know, capsule CRMs and all of those things. So yeah, we have most of the ERPs and CRMs, but we also have a bunch of these other commonly used online applications. So now I don't have to just talk to the accountants. I don't just have to talk to the account managers. I can go out and talk to the marketing team. I can talk to the folks in the warehouse about whatever they're using, or the folks in HR about their online HR application. All of this is possible now to have these Popdock lists to help me get my life going. I also like to point out Dataverse, just because it's on every Microsoft tongue everywhere. So we do have a standard Dataverse connector, as well as these guys here, these data lakes. So Amazon has their own version. Azure Data Lake is one that you'll hear quite a bit. We can connect to those as well. So if you have large amounts of data to store, those are good ways to store it, very inexpensive ways to store it, and we can access it directly in a really quick way. The second concept I want you to understand down here, this REST service and this SQL Server service. So the REST service allows us to get out to pretty much any online application. You've heard me throw out all kinds of examples of online applications. The reason I can throw all those out is probably 90% of the single purpose online apps that you're looking at out there today has some form of a REST API, which means it should be a valid data source for Popdock. Okay, and if I have data on premise, it's probably in a SQL Server somewhere. So maybe I've got an old legacy system or my warehousing system, or you know, I've probably got some data housed somewhere on a SQL Server if my business is more than 10 years old. So we can get access to that as well. All right, so looking at the Business Central connector itself, let me just get to that guy. Now with with Popdock in general, everything is based on lists for us. That's our primary focus, as I mentioned earlier. The thing to mention about all of our connectors as well, highly customizable. Everything that you see in here that's a field can be changed. It's a choice made by you. So this whole solution is designed to be for you. And if you notice, I'm not writing any code. There's no AL or anything like this behind it. I'm just filling in fields and dropping down drop downs. Okay, so if you can type and you can use a drop down, you can use Popdock. All right, so let's take a look at lists and identify what we mean by lists when we talk about Business Central. So the first thing is this here, what I call our base lists. Okay, now a basic list is any published page within Business Central. So probably 99.7% of the pages in Business Central can actually be published as a web service. Okay, and what that means is you go into Business Central, you check a little box, and now that becomes exposed to the internet as a web service, as an OData web service. Excuse me. Now Popdock can actually talk to that, and we can read that page and get all the data that's on that page, and all of the rules that are on there, and that's all well and good. That's a really simple way to go. But not all pages have all the data we want, and as I mentioned, some of those pages can't be published. So things like serial numbers are really hard to get at through pages. Okay, so the next thing that we have is something Alicia mentioned to you earlier, the query builder. Okay, it's a fairly new addition, so I think this is the first webinar where I'm coming in and presenting this. I've been presenting it for a while to individual people, but I think you guys are the first ones to be exposed to this at the webinar level. So I'm going to click on edit here and just edit this one. Again, highly customizable, so I can change what it looks like. I can even change what the endpoint name is going to be when it gets created. So what the query builder is going to do when we're done is create a Business Central web service on your Business Central tenant. Okay, so all of the work is being done on the server side, and we're accessing it through Business Central standard API, which is a pretty cool way to make this work. Okay, now the query builder itself, you guys saw a picture of this when Alicia showed it earlier. I have the ability to add any table from within. So I'm going to choose first what table I want to join it to. If you guys take a look down here, that's my 2 tables here. So I'm going to join it to. But this list of tables here, this is all of my tables, and I mean all tables. This is all of my core Business Central tables, as well as all of my ISV solution tables, as well as all of the custom tables I've built through an AL extension, or my partner has built through an AL extension. So all of this is available to you. I simply choose it. I build the relationship between those 2 tables. Okay, and then I save that, and then it's going to show up here. I don't want to muck up this view, so I'm not going to actually save it, but it's going to save it in here, and now it becomes part of my query. Okay, when I choose a table, all I have to do is select a column to make it part of my query. Okay, turn it off to take it out. Pretty straightforward. I have the ability to summarize tables for some people who are maybe a little bit more into building queries. This is going to be my group by, basically, where I can just get a list of transactions by item number instead of a list of every transaction that ever happened. Okay, I also have the ability to filter my data. So you can see here, I've got a filter here for I only want lines where the total quantity is not equal to 0. Now, if I didn't want that to show up in my query, I just wanted to use that as filter, I can do that too. Just click filter only, and now my users won't see that field, but it will still be applied as a filter, which is pretty cool. All right, I can also control this join. So when I click on this arrow right here, I get to create all of my joins. Now, anyone on the call who doesn't understand what left outer, right outer, full outer means, don't worry about it. There's somebody you work with that can help you out with that. But for now, for the folks who are maybe a bit more on the technical side, we can do them all 5 of the joins. Okay. With those joins as well, we can have multiple fields that are building that relationship. So it doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship. We can have whatever fields are required to get that relationship built. Okay, I can also go through and create custom fields. Okay, or calculated fields. So if I go through here, you can see I'm going to create, in my case, in my tables, if you remember, I had the line quantity as well as the serial number. And one line can have multiple serial numbers. So in this case, I want to see what was the cost for each serial numbered line. So we're going to take the serial number quantity times the unit price and return that. Now within Popdock, just so you guys know, all of our scripts have the ability to put functions in here. So no matter who you are, if you've ever used Excel, you're going to be able to figure out these functions as well. They match very closely to the functions in Excel for what you're trying to do, and they will flesh out your query for you, or not your query, they'll flesh out your calculation for you. Okay, once I'm done with my query builder, now again, anybody who doesn't like looking at code, maybe close your eyes for a couple seconds. This isn't meant to be scary. I just like to prove it to the technical people on the call. We're actually building all of the AL for you, so you don't have to know anything about code. We're going to take care of that code for you. Okay, all you need to know is when I'm done building this and making my joins and selecting my columns, all I have to do is click on publish, and that's going to get deployed to my Business Central tenant, where now it is a query. It's also available to me to use as a list within Popdock. Okay, so all of these things are true. It's a very simple way for you to deploy this. I don't have to create a Docker station. I don't have to go through and compile this there. I don't have to do a whole bunch of things. I can just use it. All right, so that is our two types of simple list. So to reiterate, there were the basic lists, which are any published page in Business Central. There's also the query builder list, which is pulling data from any table within Business Central. We also have in Popdock the concept of custom lists. Now, what custom lists allow me to do is mix and match all of my different Popdock lists. Okay, I'll start with these last two because they're also kind of the most easy to explain and the least interesting. Restricting data in a list literally does that. It just restricts a list. We had a customer with 6 divisions. We created 6 restricted lists for that customer for every list, 1 per division. Summarizing a list kind of does what I talked about earlier when I was talking about summary tables. A summarized list might be a list of GL transactions by account, by dimension, by period, for example, so that I don't have to look at every detailed transaction, but I can see by whatever combination what the total was for a period. Now, these 3 for me are the most fun. Join list, anybody on the call who's ever used any reporting tool ever, you have built a join, especially if it had more than 1 data source on it. So what a join does is you identify a relationship between 2 lists, and now I can pick fields from each of those lists. It's 2 or more lists. I can pick fields from those and create records that are rich and have lots of data. Now, where we're kind of unique from some of the other reporting tools out there is our join list can span multiple connectors. So I could join ERP to CRM data, or ERP to ticket data, or employee, Business Central employee to payroll data. Whatever those joins have to be, I can do that across all of my connectors. You just have to have that relationship, and it's easy as pie. Okay, merge list. Now, I did show you a sample of a merge list where I told you I was pulling data from a historical ERP, and I was merging that data with ongoing ERP data. I used GP and Business Central in that example. But merges come in handy in all kinds of places. Maybe one thing that we're finding really, really common is online stores. A lot of companies will have more than 1 store within a particular application. So I want to use a merge list to merge my sales from store A with store B so I can get overall Shopify reporting, as opposed to having to go to each of those stores individually to get my data. A merge list could be used within Business Central, for example, where I've got the ability to look at posted sales invoices and the ability to look at posted sales transactions, but I don't have anywhere to go for posted sales transactions, which I just said. What I meant was invoices and returns, and I don't have any place where I can look at them both together for all customers at the same time. I could go to the customer ledger, but that's 1 customer at a time. So merge list has all kinds of uses. Now, a compare list, it does what it says. It's comparing two lists together, and it's looking at list A to find records that do or do not exist in list A. Records that exist in list A and that do or do not exist in list B, which can be kind of hard to understand without a good example. So I have two. When I build integrations, sometimes my data source can't tell me whether or not I've processed a record. So I will use a compare list to compare my data source to my destination and show me records in my source that do not exist in my destination. Now I know which ones I have to process. I also had a partner not too long ago who built an extension for the jobs module. And whatever had happened, not all of the posted transactions in the jobs module were hitting the general ledger. So we built a compare list that showed all of the posted job transactions that did not exist as general ledger transactions. It took about 5 minutes and saved them a whole bunch of time reconciling. Okay, so that's what a compare list does. Now, just to quickly show you what these lists kind of look like and this whole no code concept that we talked about earlier. It's all about just making choices. I just choose a list that I want to add in here. You know, and again, it can be from any connector. It doesn't have to be from the connector where the other lists are coming from. And I can simply create, I can simply add that in, right? So once I've got that, I simply go through and use my fields. In this case, I'm building a merge list. So in this case, I'm just saying for each of my fields, within each table, what is that field called? Okay, again, all drop downs. And then I can go through and do things like restrictions and add the default fields and all of that good stuff that I would expect to build a full report. Okay, so from there, we've just to kind of summarize what we have seen in this page, we've got our basic lists, which are the published pages, query builder lists, which are coming from table level queries, and then we've got custom lists, which is mixing and matching our data from wherever it's coming from. Okay, and from all of that, again, we can highly customize it. We can add those details all with no code. Those actions we can add as well, just making choices. I want to show you one more thing before I toss it back to Alicia, and that's on the widget side. So if you remember, we had all kinds of widgets here, like this one on the side where we were showing you data. I want to show you how I would deploy one of those inside of a Business Central environment because, again, 0 lines of code. So, oops, I meant to go to developer there. Okay, so I'm just going to choose a widget at random. We'll choose BC Invoices here. Okay, now within my widget itself, and again, just to not to beat this over the head too much, it's all about choices here, right? So I'm just making choices for the different things that we have within it. But within my parameters for this widget, this is the important bit that I want you to see. I have the ability to choose a Business Central environment that I want to deploy this to. Then I'm going to choose a page within that environment. Okay. Now for every page, if you take a look, we've got, for example, the fact box and the fast tab. Well, let me choose a good one here. Search for item. Let's go with item card. So I have a choice of a fast tab, which again was that one on the bottom where I showed you a list of transactions, or a fact box, which was the one to the right-hand side. So I can quickly choose fast tab here, and then all I have to do is choose what parameters are going to limit the data within this list that I'm putting in here. Okay, so my parameter, you know, my item number, for example, and choose a field from my list. I'll just use that one for now. And I add this. Now I've built my relationship. So I basically have selected what page I want it on, where on the page I want it, and then how do I restrict the data within it. Once I'm happy with this, all I have to do is click on publish, and now that widget has been moved into my Business Central tenant, and my users now have this cool functionality, and I had to write 0 lines of code for that. Okay, so again, within just a few minutes, we can have this up and running in inside Business Central. Embedding in some of those other solutions, again, can be as simple as entering a code where I showed you in Teams. It could be just entering a code. And for everywhere else, if you want to get that embedded and you want full instructions, just go to popdock.com, search our knowledge base for the word embed, and any solution that we've worked with where we've done an embed, we've got full documentation with screenshots and samples. Okay. All right, I think I've covered the big rocks I wanted to cover with you guys today. I'm not seeing questions in the queue yet, so I'm going to throw it back to Alicia. And if you do have questions, now's a good time to start throwing them in the queue.
Thanks, Rod. That was great. That's just what I was going to ask next if we had any questions out there. One of the things while we might be waiting for some questions here is that you can start a free Popdock trial if you'd like. So if you'd like to do that, you can reach out to the Innovia team members there.
And we do have a few questions that have come through.
Perfect.
So the first one is Popdock a replacement for a financial reporting tool?
That's a great question. The Reader's Digest answer is no. So for those who maybe aren't aware of the difference, a financial reporting tool is really into those structured financial reports. So the balance sheet, for example, the P&L statement or income statement, statement of cash flows, they all tend to be very structured. They want their data in a particular spot. They're also doing some kind of different comparisons over time. Popdock is really meant to be more of a user query tool, so it's meant to answer a different question. Now, Popdock can support your financial statements, but it wouldn't deliver them. So they're really two different tool sets serving two different audiences, but both can work very well in conjunction with each other.
Okay, thank you. And the next one is, what's the difference between Power BI and Popdock?
All right, also a good question. So Power BI primarily is meant to be at I always say 5,000 feet and above. It's very much built on visualizations. I know some folks have built-in drill throughs where you can see the underlying data beneath a visualization, but it's also static. That drill through is static. I'm just seeing the grid of data. And it's really meant to show me trends or give me questions that I should be asking, okay? Whereas Popdock, although we can do visualizations, it's not our bailiwick. With Popdock, we're really meant to be down in the weeds answering questions. You know, what do I have to ship today? Or, you know, what are people saying about me on Twitter? How many people clicked my bit.ly link? All of those different types of things. It's really meant to be detailed tabular data. And again, both solutions can be used to work very well together. With Popdock, I can use Popdock as a data source in a Power BI or an Excel type tool because Popdock is actually a little bit better at gathering data from multiple data sources and blending it. Actually, frankly, a lot better than Power Query, in that Power Query will pull down all of my data first and then take care of my joins and my filters, whereas Popdock will do a lot of the joins and filters first and then pull down the data. All of that is to say, again, two different purposes with two different audiences. One is a general overview of, you know, whatever it is I'm supposed to be asking questions about, but at a high level, whereas one is a very detailed view of our status or whatever we're asking way down in the weeds.
All right, well, I believe those are all the questions that we have for you guys today. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your Innovia consulting rep, or you can reach out to Alicia, and she would be more than happy to address any questions with you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much.
And don't forget to check out our conference page at innovia.com/conferences. Our customer conference is coming up on May 4th and 5th at the University of Notre Dame. This is a free event for you to attend. Make sure you read up on all the details and register today so you can come meet the eOne team. Alicia and Chris are actually going to be attending. And you can also meet the Innovia team, our ISVs, and our clients. And I also want to mention our upcoming events. So you can check all of those events out at innovia.com/events. And also check out our training workshop page at innovia.com/workshops. We have a variety of workshops to fit your role. So check out the ones that are right for you and your team. And lastly, have you heard of our Innovia Conversation podcast? We have a library of podcast episodes for you to listen to, and you can learn more on our podcast page, and that's innovia.com/podcast. So browse the selection and subscribe so you'll get notified when those new episodes air. All right, well, thank you again, Alicia and Rod, for the presentation, and for everyone on our webinar, or if you're watching on demand, we thank you for taking the time out to join us. We hope to see you again soon at another Innovia webinar. Take care, everyone.
Thanks again.
Thank you.